Hello, everybody. Welcome or welcome back if we just saw you in the opening remarks. I'm Hala Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Book Publicity and Events Manager. Thank you so much for joining us for the first panel of our 2025 Writers Summit. The Atmosphere Press Writers Summit is a completely free, entirely virtual two-day writers conference where you have the opportunity to connect with fellow writers who are serious about their publishing goals. Whether you're preparing your manuscript, exploring your publishing options, or figuring out how to promote your book once it's out in the world, this summit features 8 digestible sessions that will give you real, practical insights from industry experts. In these sessions, we'll be hearing from published Atmosphere Press authors, learning about book coaching and marketing strategies, and discovering how Atmosphere Press can support you at every stage of the process. In this first panel, we'll be talking about the truth about hybrid publishing with our guest, Dr. Kyle McCord. Kyle will walk us through the ins and outs of hybrid publishing, including the benefits and what to know before signing a contract. You'll also have the opportunity for Kyle to answer any of your questions during the Q&A portion of the event. So at any time, please do use the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can send in your questions there and also check the Answered tab to see answers to questions that have already been posed. Also, just for attendees of this panel, we'll be running an exclusive giveaway for a $1,000 discount on a publication contract to one attendee. The first person to submit their manuscript and be picked up for publication will win this discount. But be sure to mention Kyle's panel in your submission cover letter for consideration. And one more thing before we get into Kyle's talk, this panel is brought to you by Lone Star Literary Life, your gateway to the vibrant world of Texas literature. Discover the place you can immerse yourself in the stories of Texas authors, stay up to date with the latest literary news, and find resources that make every reading experience unforgettable. Whether you're searching for your next great book, looking to connect with fellow literary lovers, or simply exploring the rich tapestry of Texas storytelling, this is where to begin. Let Lone Star Literary Life inspire your journey, one page at a time. As a publisher based in Austin, Texas, Atmosphere Press is especially proud to collaborate with Lone Star Literary Life. You can learn more about the stories, authors, and events that make Texas literature unforgettable at lonestarliterary.com. With that, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Kyle McCord is the author of 7 books, including National Poetry Series finalist Magpies in the Valley of Oleanders and the novel Reunion of the Good Weather Suicide Cult. He has worked he has work featured or forthcoming in Agni, Blackbird, Boston Review, the Gettysburg Review, the Harvard Review, the Kenyon Review, Plowshares, Tri-Quarterly, and elsewhere. He's received grants or awards from the Academy of American Poets, Vermont Studio Center, and the Baltic Writing Residency. Kyle holds an MFA from University of Massachusetts Amherst and a PhD from the University of North Texas. He served as Associate Poetry Editor of The Nation and currently serves as Executive Editor of Goldwake Press and Acquisitions Director for Atmosphere Press. He's married to the visual artist Lydia McCord and lives in Des Moines, Iowa. Kyle, I'm so excited to invite you to unmute because the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Hala. And Hala, thank you so much for putting this together. This is such an incredible event to be able to share at. And y'all, I have so many things to tell you. So I'll try not to speak too quickly. I want to be respectful of my time, but I'll also tell you there's so much to say because the world of publishing, specifically the world of hybrid publishing, has just exploded right in these past few years, and Atmosphere has been a huge part of that. One of the things to say is that about 15 or maybe 20 years ago, hybrid publishing really didn't exist as an option. And really, you had a choice between traditional publishing, where you often would have to wait very long periods of time. You also were beholden to agents who often, were not that invested necessarily in the world of literature. They were more invested in the marketing of particular books, or just making a lot of money off finding the right person with the right name and publishing that book. Or you were, looking for a small indie press that might not have the resources that you were really looking for. And I say this as someone who really sort of came of age in as a poet in that time. The other alternative was self-publishing, which at the time didn't have, let's be honest, a lot of cachet, right? It really was the kind of publication that many presses would not take seriously. In fact, often, if you were trying to find a job as a part of publishing, uh, you know, if it was self-published, oh, that didn't count, right? Um, and so hybrid publishing really came about because uh, authors and presses looked at that situation and said, there has to be a better way to do this. And what really we've done with Atmosphere is combine the best of both things, which is, on the one hand, with traditional publishing, you want to be selected, right? You want your book to be part of a curated selection of works that ultimately are going to, in so many ways, help grow who you are as a writer, and where you also are going to be expanding the range of what the press does in a really meaningful way. You also want top level editors, top level cover designer. You want an interior designer and proofer who are going to know exactly what they're doing. And then you want a marketing team that's going to get out there and help your book get into the hands of readers. With self-publishing, you have to hire all those people individually, and suddenly you have to become an expert on every area of publishing. And my oh my, that is, at least for me, especially with someone with a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old, and with a lot of practical responsibilities in the world, it just isn't a very practical possibility. And alternatively, with traditional publishing, I don't want to wait on someone who uh, may or may not be interested in the book, and then they need to try and sell the book. And look, that also, for the wild majority of people, that's just not really a possibility, or not something that's necessarily going to happen, no matter how great your book might be. Um, and so, one of the truths about hybrid publishing that we can talk about right up front is, for many people, for many, many people, it's really the best of both worlds, because it doesn't oblige you to give away all your rights, give away all your autonomy, have to wait a long period of time for a traditional publisher who may or may not ever show up. Right. And with self-publishing, it allows you to have a team on hand who's going to work for you at often a much better rate than if you hired all the people individually in the first place. So, 3 questions to ask yourself to prepare for publication with a hybrid press. And these are the same questions that I asked myself before I published with Atmosphere. Okay. Um, so, the first question is, in exact as terms as possible, what are your goals? So this is a great opportunity to dream out loud. What would be meaningful for you? And it can be something as small as, I would really love to read at my local Barnes and Noble, or my local independent bookstore. Or, you know what? I think it would make Grandpa incredibly proud to get to read my book while he's here on Earth, right? Those are great things, right? And so, or alternatively, you might say, I really have this review site that has always been interested in my work. I'd really love for them to get a copy of the book. I really would love to see my book get a real shot at this award or that award. Those are all things that a hybrid press should be able to help you with, and you want to make sure those are things that they offer, right? Um, Consider production goals as well as marketing goals. What I just mentioned there were largely, in a sense, marketing goals. Um, However, what you also want to consider is, how do you want your book to look? Right? Look at the covers of, the presses that you want to work with. Are they going to be able to achieve the kind of effect that you're looking for, right? How professionalized is the work that they do? What do you want the interior of the book to look like? And again, you don't have to become an absolute expert, but you probably have some great standards that you would say, you know what, I read a lot of books and here are things that I love to see in the books that I pick off the shelf, right? Um, and so marketing goals, production goals, right? And then what effect would you like your book to have on readers? And can an editor help with this? And look, maybe you've had some editors who worked with you on the book before. Maybe you've had beta readers. Maybe you've had nobody, right, who's really looked at the book. Um, One of the things you want to make sure is that you are going to have an editor who is going to be someone who's experienced. Maybe they got an MFA, maybe they have a PhD, maybe they're just someone who's really engaged with the industry and knows their work. Those are the kinds of folks that we do hire and maintain at Atmosphere Press because we love our dev editors. They change the world for our authors. I know that from my book, they changed the world for me. When I submitted my book, I felt very sure that I knew the exact effect I wanted the book to have on readers. I was looking for this kind of response. And I thought the book was completely done. And my editor, Alex Kale, who now has a very leading role at Atmosphere, said, well, actually, you could change this thing, and it would amplify what you're doing, and you could strengthen this character, and actually, you could cut out this part. And I didn't take every single piece of advice, and that's one of the virtues of Atmosphere Press is you have autonomy, right? You get to make the final choices about what you cut or what you add. But the changes that I made as the result of having an editor had a huge effect on my work. Reviewers were very, let's put it this way, they wrote about the things that I changed. And that wouldn't have happened without an editor. So again, the first question, what are your goals? Again, what you want to do is dream out loud, come up with a small list of things that would be meaningful for you and find out if whatever press you want to work with can actually do that. Find out if they deliver on those kinds of things. Don't just think about marketing, think about production. Think about what the book is going to look like and feel like. People do judge a book by its cover, by its interior, by its spine, by its everything. And so we want to make sure that your book is the best it can possibly be, which means working with professionals when it comes to editors, when it comes to cover designers, when it comes with staff. And we just want to make sure that your book has the effect on readers that you are trying to achieve, right? The second question you want to ask is, what is your range of resources to invest? So one of the things you want to think about is what can you actually put into a project like this? And I don't just mean money, I mean time, right? Your time is valuable, right? And so one of the things you want to consider is how much bandwidth do you have to produce and promote a book? It's one of the reasons you want to work with a hybrid press is that you want to have experts on hand so that someone can say, oh, well, we actually need to convert this into this particular file in order to do this thing. Don't worry, I've got it handled, right? I've got it handled is one of those things that is music to your ears once you have worked on publishing a book is, um, you know, if you have if you can invest resources into a press that can take care of things for you, that's huge. So one of the things you want to consider is, again, how much monetarily do you want to invest? And how much are you able to invest? And how much bandwidth are you able to invest? Right. And again, one of the things I always consider is I have a house that is starting to age a little bit, right? And there's things we need to do with the roof, and there's things we need to do with the shed. And I could spend time researching, becoming the expert on every single one of those things. But you know what? I think I could probably be better off spending my time doing other things that in some way are productive and just hire a professional to do that. That's one of the great virtues of Atmosphere Press is that we have professionals at every stage along the way. Um, so then that raises the question, how interested are you in learning skills that could be used for later books, or is this a singular endeavor for you? Is this the one book that you've wanted to publish, right? If so, that's great, right? And you can, you can hire a hybrid press to say, we're going to just take care of everything for you. It's even better if you say, you know what, I got a lot more books in me, right? And maybe I've already got some already on the way. In which case you can say, you know what, I'm going to learn some skills from working with professionals so that I know the right questions to ask. And I know the right things to think about when I'm thinking about what's my cover going to look like? What's my interior going to look like? Right. So, in terms of the range of resources to invest, think about how much time you have. Think about how much, what the kind of team of professionals are that are available to you. Any press you hire should have their masthead available to you. They should show you exactly who you're going to work with, not necessarily that they're going to assign you a particular, editor or something, but you should know this is the team that I'd be working with. And then can they reciprocate by teaching you some skills along the way that might be really important? Then, lastly, because I want to leave time for questions, what are the critical features of a fair deal, right? So, first of all, it should be a generous return for you as the author, especially because you do have an upfront cost. At Atmosphere, we do a 90-10 split, which is bananas. So you are getting 90% of the returns from the book itself, right? Atmosphere is keeping 10%, which means we have some skin in the game, which of course is exciting, right? You also want to make sure that you have autonomy, right? Autonomy when it comes to what goes into the book, what doesn't go into the book, what the post publication process looks like, so that you have some control over how the book is marketed, where the book is marketed, what kind of demographics you're reaching. You should also be retaining your key rights, right? That means that you should be able to say, well, I know that I'm keeping film rights. I know that I'm keeping any kind of audiobook rights. I know that I'm keeping any of the rights to do with foreign language, right? That should be spelled out. And frankly, because it's a hybrid contract, you should be hanging on to those. You should be able to get your book reprinted. If you get a better offer, you should be able to say, okay, you know what? I am going to, now that my book is out, I would like to reprint with this press that's made me this offer. Awesome. That should be absolutely available to you, right? You also want to make sure that there's a clear marketing game plan, again, as specific as possible in terms of, are they working with NetGalley? Are they working with Goodreads? Are they, do they have a unique program to connect you with other authors? What's their, connection with Kirkus or Publishers Weekly, right? Can they get you endorsements for the back of the book? And then you want to make sure that there's a guarantee of access to experts at each phase of book production, so that your book isn't being, outsourced to people who really may not know exactly what they're doing, right? So, just to go back through these things, the three things that I think really matter in terms of thinking about who you want to work with. One, um, come up with a list of goals, right? And say, these are the things that I really would like to see happen, and make sure that your press matches and can make those goals achievable, right? Secondly, consider your range of resources. What are you able to invest in terms of time, in terms of energy, in terms of finances? There's lots of presses that will promise you the sky at $20,000, $30,000. Well, that's the kind of, let's put it this way, that's the kind of investment that isn't merited, because you can do a lot of those things more cheaply, more competitively, without needing to pay, some astronomical sum of money in order to get the kinds of things the Atmosphere would deliver at a much more competitive price. And then three, study and make sure you understand the features of a fair deal, right? Again, and what you should expect. We have a lot of conversations about this. You can actually check out, a number of YouTube panels that we've done on this, and you can stick around and hear from all of our panelists today and tomorrow about what kind of deal they got for their own books, right? And what I will say is that, if you're unsure, you can always set up a time to chat with us, right? You can submit your books to us, and you can speak to an editor like next week, right? You can have a chance to have a real conversation with someone who is going to engage with your book and who is going to be able to talk to you about what a fair deal might look like, and maybe even put something in front of you that could be the best possible deal for your book. It might start here today, your journey towards publication.
Thank you so much for those insights, Kyle. I think it's very valuable to hear from someone who is very entrenched in the industry. So it was wonderful to get that perspective. And at this point, like you mentioned, we do have some time for our audience Q&A. So for anyone who has a question, go ahead and type those in the Q&A box. It's at the bottom of the Zoom screen. We're going to do our best to get to as many questions as we can. And we've already got a few coming in, so I think we can just jump right in. This first question is, should I try to get an agent or should I just hybrid publish?
Sure. Well, here's what I'll tell you. I will give you um, two insights about working with agents. And bear in mind, we just got back from the Associated Writing Programs conference where um, we talked to a lot of people, including agents, right? I think that in general, traditional publishing, one of the challenges of it is I mentioned there's a disconnect between the idea of what's a good book and what's a saleable book, right? It's perfectly possible that someone who's a celebrity puts together a book that is just total garbage, right? But you know what? That book has a baked in audience, so that person's going to get a contract. And it becomes really challenging to compete with someone like that because they have their own notoriety, or maybe they're a TikTok star, or maybe they have a really big Instagram, right? One of the things that I really love is the idea of some kind of meritocracy where people who work really hard on their book, who maybe have a great idea, get a fair chance at the market. I don't know that you necessarily get that with every agent, right? And so that's not a dig at them in particular, but I think that any agent you talk to would probably say the same, right? Additionally, I think that a lot of people waste huge amounts of time waiting for an agent, right? None of us are getting any younger, to the best of my knowledge, right? And so as a result, I would say that when agents often tell you it'll be a year before they even get a chance to read your manuscript, and that read might be 5 minutes, that's a whole year of your life waiting for that 5 minutes, right? I don't know that that's worth it in terms of return when you can work with a team of publishing professionals in half that time, in 4 to 6 months, to get your book into the world and start getting it marketed, start getting it in the hands of readers, which are the people who are going to be the most excited to hear your work.
Yes, absolutely. I think, I mean, angle focused on sales can be useful, but it can also really exclude a lot of titles that, someone is underestimating based on past trends. You never know what might could be really successful in the future. So I think that's a really important point to consider. This next question is, do authors keep their rights when they publish with a hybrid publisher?
Most of the time, or sometimes is really the honest answer, right? Sometimes, and they should. Let me emphasize that. As someone who thinks a lot about author rights, you should keep your autonomy. You should keep your rights, and that list of rights is really long, right? If you look at an atmosphere contract, the kinds of rights that we want the author to keep is just it's a full paragraph of things, and you might never think of them, right? And you keep 90% of the proceeds. I again, obviously, I published my own book with Atmosphere, every day I talk to writers about publishing with Atmosphere, and part of the reason I do that is because I really believe that we offer the kinds of guarantees in terms of rights that it is unique across the industry, right? So really what I mean is that um, any hybrid press you work with, you should be keeping your rights as an author, right? You also do want them to have some investment. So you don't want to work with a press that just says, we're going to take none of the revenue from your book. There's good rational reason to want them invested in the work that you're doing, whether it's the idea that you are going to come back or do another book, or alternatively, if they're taking some measure of the proceeds. But the key thing is this: you should be the beneficiary of your own success. And that means keeping your rights, keeping your autonomy, and again, working with a hybrid press that is going to guarantee those things and is going to guarantee a very good rate of return for you as the author.
Yes, absolutely. It's hard sometimes to understand exactly what that split can look like or should look like. So it's great to be prepared in advance of going into that conversation. This next question, I know a lot of people are curious about this. What sorts of money and time are necessary in hybrid publishing? Can you compare and contrast the cost and the time commitment, especially with other publishing?
Sure. So, what I can tell you is this: um, Atmosphere Press, our essential plan, which includes everything to get you from start to finish in terms of the production and then get you a great start on the marketing of the book, is a total of three payments of $2,100, $6,300. We're very open about that. And if you are dealing with a press that is not open about that, I would have some big question marks with that, because transparency is something that you should really value in the press that you're working with. One of the things that I talk about when I talk with authors on the phone is sometimes they'll say, "Well, I have an offer, for $2,000 or for $4,000, right?" One of the things I can tell you is that you get what you pay for with those things, right? If you're getting an offer that's significantly below what Atmosphere is offering, as someone who knows the market value of the experts that you work with, they're cutting corners somewhere that it is going to be visible, right? And so I would say that if you're budgeting, anything less than maybe $6,000 is going to be um, probably not the kind of product that you're looking for, right? Additionally, in terms of time, if you're working with a press that says you are going to need to budget this amount of, like something like 7 to 8 hours a week or 10 hours a week in order to get the book out there, that's going to seem like a lot, right? I think that there are times in the publication process where it's perfectly possible that you're going through and making revisions, or you're working with an editor, or you're really excited. And here's the thing: the tasks that a press should be laying before you should be things you're excited about, right? Not, I'm putting the book in an Ingram template, not, I'm getting the book ready and I need to figure out the spine length and I need to do this and I need to learn all these different things. Look, those can be valuable if you want to produce books, right, for the rest of your life, but that's not necessarily what I want to do with my time. So it's great to have a team of experts that's going to take those things off your plate so that you're maybe spending, something like maybe 3 hours in a given week doing something you love for the book, helping to come up with the back cover copy, or crafting responses to an interview that you're a part of, or getting ready to share your book at a reading or a book club or something like that. Those are the kinds of things that writers should be doing, not learning every single intricacy in order to self-publish their book.
Right. You want to avoid a situation where you're sort of being gate kept away by that sort of process, which, we see from all kinds of industries, not just publishing, but it's certainly rampant in publishing as well. This next question is, why should I publish with Atmosphere and not another hybrid publisher?
Sure. Um, well, what I can tell you is this. And again, I talk with authors every day about their options, right? Um, and I would not in any way say, oh, there are no other good actors in the world of publishing. Fortunately, that's not the case. There are plenty. However, they often are not as competitively priced as you might like. The other big difference is this: Atmosphere is run by writers. It's run by people who not only know the industry and have been and are participant, but I think about the fact that when we went to the Associated Writing Programs Conference, we were, if not the only hybrid press there, one of the only presses there. And certainly we were talking to people, we were engaging. There was an excitement in the air about what we were doing because people, writers had, let's put it this way, we were having a very different conversation than when it was happening anywhere else at AWP, right? And so you can be a part of that conversation. You can say, you know what, I think there are lots of ways to participate, and I think that Atmosphere Press is a way that is, one, genuinely fair, right? Two, transparent, and three, ultimately lets me as the writer have agency. And the reason that that's happening is that when we set out to build this press, Nick at the core of it thought, what do I as a writer want? That question has been central to everything we do at Atmosphere. And I don't think there's anywhere else in the market that starts with that as their core question to work from.
Yeah, I love that you highlight, that connection point with authors or unpublished writers, because I just want to emphasize that really is part of what's so important to us, and we always want to prioritize that. So I love touching on that point in particular. This next question is, how do I write a good cover letter to maximize my chances of landing the actual publication contract?
Sure. That is let's put it this way. Um, don't spend as much time writing the book as you do, or writing your cover letter as you do writing the book, right? Write a great book. And then what you can do is, there are actually quite a lot of great resources out there about how to write a cover letter. In fact, I believe we might even have some blog posts about that you can go back and reference, right? One of the great things about the Atmosphere site is that we have advice for writers. We have a blog you can follow. We have social media that shares lots of great resources, right? Where you can find out all the core elements. What I would say is, when it comes down to it, um, there's lots of things you can include in a cover letter. What I would say is core is to share a little bit about who you are as the writer and be forthright. If this is your first publication, your first journey, right? Sometimes it's going to be impressive if you share that, and they would say, "Wow, actually, I can't believe they that this is their first crack at this because the book's quite good," right? Share a little bit about your journey. Share a little bit about the core elements of the book without giving too much away, and then share a little bit about what you're looking for. Maybe even a little bit about, if you've looked at the press and you have certain things that you admire about them, share that as well. Or for example, you're, submitting to Atmosphere, say, I saw a very good looking gentleman who was discussing the Atmosphere press. I can't name names, but he talked about submitting your work. If that is the case, well, first of all, a little bit of kissing goes a long way, right? And so, at any rate, that's to say that you will get a chance to have a conversation with me and talk about the book itself. So, all joking aside, the key thing is to know a little bit about the press, maybe share where you heard about them, all that kind of good stuff.
Absolutely. Our next question, real quick. What are some things I should avoid when considering what publisher to work with?
Sure. Um, I'll give you three quick things. The first is, when you look up a press and you really want to learn about them, guys, don't rely on Reddit. don't rely on, the kinds of, let's put it this way, unproctored sites where you don't have someone who's going to regulate, because a lot of times those are just places where um, you know an unscrupulous publisher can go say, oh, I'm going to write all these bad things about this other press, right? What you want to look at is stuff like Trustpilot, stuff like the Better Business Bureau, right? Those are places that are curated, that really, where really you get an honest appraisal of the work itself, and those are great places to look to find out about the publisher that you're going to work with. Okay. Two, um, I would say really look out for any place that is not transparent about, again, having a masthead, featuring their contract on their website, making sure that they have very honest about the kind of work that they do, what they can do, what they can't do. If you talk to a press and they're all yes and no, no, greet that with some skepticism. One of the things that I always strive for when I'm talking to people is for my yes to be yes and my no to be no, right? So if someone says, "Oh man, I really want a press that can guarantee that my book will be made into a movie," no such press exists on planet Earth, right? What we can say is we will work with you to help achieve whatever your dream is, right? Whatever you want to do, we're going to position you the best we possibly can to do that. Um, and so again, somewhere that's going to be transparent and honest with you. And then thirdly, um, I would look for somewhere that looks enthusiastic, right? Is their press growing? Are they adding experts? Are they let's put it this way. Atmosphere Press started out with just Nick Courtwright. And now it's a full team of nearly 50 professionals who are going to work with you every step of the way. And we, had a giant booth at AWP. We've had books that have been featured on the billboard in Times Square. We've gotten reviews in LA Review of Books, right? Look for the place where there's energy, there's excitement, there's growing. And let's put it this way, the fact that we have sponsors who we're working with, right, tells you a little bit about the kind of credibility of the press that you'd be working with at Atmosphere. You're looking for that same thing when you start searching for who you want to work with.
Absolutely. And our last question we have time for, if someone does want to take the next step with their manuscript, whether they're completely new to Atmosphere or they've already been offered a contract, what should they do next?
Well, you could talk to me, right? And so one of the things that'll happen is I believe Hala has either already posted or is going to post a quick link to where you can submit to Atmosphere Press. You can send us your book, and you don't have to wait a year for those 5 minutes, right? You can talk to somebody next week, which is really unheard of in the publishing world, right? And you can have an honest conversation about the kind of work that you've done, what you want to see happen, right? And so, in terms of next steps, um, you can reach us that way. You can have a conversation with an editor. You also can go watch any of our testimonials, video testimonials from authors talking about their experience working with Atmosphere. That is something that is highly unusual in our industry. You see lots of presses that can say, well, this author said this author said this. We have some of that, don't get me wrong. We have lots of people who said, I want to record a video for you about my experiences at Atmosphere Press. Maybe even they were willing to get on here and talk about their experience themselves. It's one of the reasons I'm excited to hear from Gabby. I'm excited to hear from Allison. I'm excited to hear from everybody who's going to be sharing. There are so many, when you guys shared the lineup, I was like, man, it is packed with authors that I'm super excited to hear from, that have great insights about work, not just working with Atmosphere, but about the industry and about their own experiences publishing. I have learned more from Gabby Coatsworth about publishing than almost anybody else. And she's about to share right after this.
Absolutely, she is. But before we get into that panel, I just want to say that is all the questions we have time for in this panel. But if you have a question that wasn't answered, please do stick around for the later panels that Kyle mentioned later today and tomorrow. You can also check out Atmosphere Press's YouTube channel for previous live sessions with publishing professionals, including but not limited to Kyle. But that being said, thank you so much to Dr. Kyle McCord for sharing your knowledge and your advice with us today. Thank you to everyone for being here and for the thoughtful questions. The next panel is going to be about how to pick the right publisher for your book with award-winning author and speaker Gabby Coatsworth. We'll be giving away more exclusives in her panel, and she has a lot of great insights that it's going to be great to hear from. So, to rejoin the webinar for Gabby's panel, just click the same link you clicked to join the webinar for this panel. Her panel is going to begin shortly, so while you're in the digital waiting room, you can enjoy excerpts from the audiobook, A Walk Through the Wilderness by Dan Conger. Thank you again to this panel's sponsor, Lone Star Literary Life. You can learn more about the stories of Texas authors, stay up to date with the latest literary news, and find resources that make every reading experience unforgettable on their website. That's the link in the chat. I just put in there one more time. And remember, of course, to submit your manuscript today for a special chance to win a $1,000 discount on your next publication contract. Be sure to mention this panel in your cover letter for consideration. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you in the next panel.